I'm recording. Okay, so I thought it was cool because we were able to, like, what we would have been doing in practicum, we were able to, like, see the observations and then, like, have other people give feedback. So you're, like, not only learning from what you see in the observation, but also learning from other more experienced people.
I liked how they talked about like their own personal experiences in each classroom. Like all three of them was talking about like how she's experienced show and tell in the classroom and how they've all experienced different things. And I thought it was neat to kind of get the inside of how other people view things.
Like they had connections, so they made it more relatable, like
Right.
personal experiences. Yeah.
One thing I noticed that they talked about a lot was like interacting with the students. So like, for example, during starting the day, like whenever the kids came in, instead of just going around and like staring or whatever, the teacher would like sit down and talk with the students and like ask what they had for breakfast, and was like reading the book with the little girl. So like interacting with the kids to get to know them and like make them feel comfortable at the beginning of the day, like right off the start.
Yeah, I really liked that. Like she was sitting down at the table with them and she was playing and talking. I really liked that too.
And going off what you guys said, I liked how one of the other, I don't know what they would be called, the people that were talking to us about their experiences, I liked how she said like one thing that she done on Monday mornings was ask her students what they done over the weekend, or how was their weekend, or what did you see, just simple things like that. I liked how she
one of the guys said like when you first meet children, like your first impression is like the verbal interaction, so it's important that you like start to build, that's where you start your relationship, so you can like build from that.
And he said that like sometimes there's a window, like you have a certain window that you have to get to know people, so like sometimes the kid will open their window for this amount of time, and if you don't make
the time
right, if you don't, I don't know what I'm trying to say.
I know what you mean. Like if you don't take advantage of it,
right,
they will like not be
right, and they may shut you out or shut down on you, and you know it might be hard for you to open that window back up.
Yeah.
Then I guess the next part was the cleanup part, and I think one of my biggest takeaways there was the people like on the panel were talking about how like for example the kid just kind of like threw the blocks on the ground, and instead of just saying don't do that, or that's not how we treat our toys, or that's not what we do, she like gave him a reason for why we don't do that, because she said, you know, if you're rough with the toys then they'll break and then we won't be able to play with them. So I noticed how they said it's important to like, you need to think through what you're going to say to the students so that you can give them a reason to see why they're doing what they're doing and why they need to clean up their station.
Yeah, one of the things they said was that like to be careful with your wording when you like are encouraging them to clean up, because it's like important to tell them like why. Like in my experience, I worked at like a private summer camp, and they like are used to getting new toys whenever they want. So if they broke something, like they didn't really care. And so it's important to explain to them like why it is a big deal if you don't treat your toys the way that you should.
Well, I liked how she went over there and she not sat down, but squatted down with him like on his level and explained to him, you know, hey, if you break these toys, or if you do this to the toys, then the legs might break off or whatever, you know. One of my questions I wrote down was, would you have handled that situation any differently? Or did you think she handled it in the best possible way?
She was so calm the whole time. Like I noticed that like some teachers I feel like would have been a little more harsh with him maybe, but she remained calm the whole time.
Yeah.
I don't know.
One of the guys talked about how like it's so easy for us to like have reactions, and like I feel like I am oftentimes like really reactive to things like, hey, stop doing that. But she like didn't just like say stop. She like made it into like a lesson, which is like super important in any kind of situation with children.
Also, she didn't like blame the student, because instead of saying it's your fault or you break it, it's your fault, she kind of explained, it's happened before, so it's okay. So she kind of got down on his level, because I don't know if y'all noticed, but he kind of started to get upset. So she kind of came down. Instead of blaming him, she was calm and explained everything to him.
Yeah.
I also liked how one of the people on the panel, they were they were talking about how students at that age are obsessed with gravity. They love the fact that, hey, I can drop this item and it's going to hit the floor, So I think that's important to take into consideration too, that sometimes their little heads aren't completely wrapped around the fact that what they're doing could be dangerous or could cause a consequence. So just thought that was important too.
I have a small group starting up in a little bit, so I'll have to leave real quick. But it's okay if I say my piece on this real quick before I leave. I feel like one thing that I got out of that, with what Brittany said about them being obsessed with gravity, it's kind of like their own way of exploring. They don't really think in their heads, oh, I'm gonna do this just to break it for the sake of it. It's more just, oh, if I drop it, it falls to the ground. And I think I really appreciate how in that moment she could have been harsh with him and have him go somewhere else or have him sit out, but she just took the time to explain to him, here, let me show you how to use him and what happens if you do that. And just instead of escalating the way it could have been, she kind of looked at the situation okay, I don't really have to be intense in this moment. This is just a learning experience. And that's what a lot of education is. It's not necessarily a lot of intense reactionary moments so much as more, okay, it's just another learning experience. Let's just calmly think through how we can go through it.
Yeah. Okay, I guess the next section is the story time. One of the things that stood out to me is that I think I have a hard time with little kids thinking oh, if they're not looking at me, they're not listening. But he said wandering eyes don't necessarily mean wandering attention. They were still engaged with the story even though they were wiggling around and stuff.
I think it's also important to remember they are so young, so you can't make you little 3 and 4 year olds just sit there and be completely still with your eyes on you 24/7.
Yeah, that's nearly impossible.
Right here.
Yeah. So just because they're not looking, I mean, they're still paying attention, but they're just kind of wiggling around still.
There's something I can relate to be honest.
Caleb.
Because I don't know, it sounds in class, I don't really I don't have issues with standing still, but I get off focus if I just sit there for too long. So I'm still there, but I'm just not able to keep my complete focus engaged while I'm sitting there. I'm not being required to do anything at that moment other than just listen. But I can still process some things being heard. I'm just not as active as I would be if I was doing something hands on. So that's something I can really get. Okay, I'm gonna head out. Good talking to you guys.
Okay.
Bye, Caleb.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry.
Yeah, okay, so the next section is show and tell. And so what stood out in that they were it asked what is something that they are practicing during that, and it's such a good thing for language skills. And I remember doing it, and I was so excited to share something from home with my friends, and so it's just a great opportunity for them.
I love show and tell. That was my favorite thing. I can still remember what I took to show and tell in the first grade. It was one of those little Barbie things that you put on this handle and you pulled the string and they flew around. You know what I'm talking about?
Yes.
Ooh,
So
yeah.
I love that. And I also liked how the teacher was pushing the students tell us more about it,
Yeah.
just trying to get them more involved. And it also said that show and tell helped language development. So
I also noticed in that section that it said, be aware that some kids may not want to participate. I think that's important to remember because, some kids, everybody has different home lives. So, remember that every student might not have something to bring in. So, it's important to make them feel comfortable still in the situation.
You could provide, like in that situation, I feel like you could provide the student with something from the classroom that maybe they could share so they wouldn't feel left out.
Like you could tell them to like pick their favorite thing from the classroom and like tell about it. That's a good idea. They also said like for the show and tell that like to find like a lot of times we try to like quiet kids, but like that we should really find moments to allow students to speak and get their ideas out because they do have so many like fun and creative ideas and they should be able to express those.
I wrote that exact quote down. I like that too. He said a lot of times teachers are trying to get students to be quiet and get so caught up in classroom management when what students need is more time to talk freely and have opportunities to share and express themselves.
Yeah.
I also think it was really good that like the students got to ask questions during, so like their peers were asking questions, so it kind of makes the person like showing the show and tell off like kind of special, like they're kind of in control. So it kind of gives them a sense of, I don't know.
I loved when I was in school, like when the teacher would go out of the classroom, she would call someone to come to the board and take names, you know, if someone was doing something bad. And I just loved the feeling of being in control and being able to.
You were the big old tattletale?
Yeah, pretty much.
She was a huge tattletale.
And I love that. And so, like, I just feel like kids just love the feeling of them being in control and being able to, you know, express their ideas without people interrupting them, you know?
Yeah. In my practicum classroom this year, they like signed up for a job each week. So each kid like had a job and they got to pick which job it was. And it was like super cool because it was like jobs that the teacher would have had to do, but she's giving them responsibility and she's allowing herself to not have to do those things. And they like get to a choice and they were excited about it. So I thought that was really cool. Okay, I guess the last one for that first video is the leaving the classroom.
So I had a question I did write down a question about that. So obviously the example that the video gave us was like a pre-K classroom, maybe ages 3 and 4, and she was counting them off for them to line up. Did you think that was appropriate that she done that with that age students, considering the numbers went to 19?
I think like yes, because it wasn't really about them counting, it was more about her assigning them a number so they know their place. Like I don't think it would be inappropriate.
I think it kind of was good practice though, because I mean, even though if they can't recognize those numbers, the teacher can help them to see those numbers, and they're still getting practice with numbers even though they might not recognize that that's happening during the situation.
And I noticed that like when they were all sitting there and she was saying like number 12, a 1 and a 2. So maybe even though the student didn't know what number 12 was, by the teacher saying a number 1 and a 2 might have helped them make that connection, you know?
Yeah, it's even just like a good intro to numbers for them.
I feel like it was appropriate. I mean, Chelsea's in pre-K and she can count to like 50, so they do.
Oh, Chelsea!
Chelsea, okay.
The last thing that I wrote down for that section was just like that like they talked a lot with the grad students about fostering a sense of feeling safe by like creating familiar routines, and that's like that goes throughout the day, like having a schedule that they follow. Like I literally still remember my recess time from 2nd grade, so like it is like really good for kids to like know what's coming next so they know how to prepare for it and what attitude or energy they need to have for it.
To add to that, like it also talked about like how there shouldn't be any surprises throughout, you know, the child's day of what's going to come next. I can remember like when we would have like a tornado drill or something simple like that, a fire drill in the middle of the day. It just surprised everybody, and then after that the day was completely chaotic.
Yeah,
just something so small can make, you know, a big difference in a day in the classroom. And also the last thing I wrote down was to allow students' voices to be heard. it's so important to listen to each child and just listen to what they have to say. And I think that that can make a huge difference in letting the child know that you care about them and that you're there for them.
Yeah.
That's all I have.
That's all I got for this. Okay, I'm gonna stop recording unless someone has something. You're good. Okay, I'm stopping it.